Ethan had always considered himself a simple man. He lived in a small house on the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by tall, whispering trees and wide fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. He worked from home, fixing electronics, and helping neighbors with their computer problems. His only constant companion was his golden retriever, Max, a friendly and energetic dog who had been with him since he was a puppy. Max was more than a pet to Ethan. He was family. They did everything together. In the mornings, Max would nudge Ethan awake with his cold nose, and together they would go for long walks along the old dirt road behind the house. In the evenings, Ethan would throw a ball and Max would chase it across the yard, barking happily. Sometimes, when Ethan was feeling lonely or tired, Max would curl up next to him on the sofa, resting his head on Ethan's knee, offering silent comfort that needed no words. One night, everything changed. It was a cool spring evening. The sky was clear, filled with 1,000 bright stars. Ethan sat in his living room reading a book, while Max dozed near the fireplace. Suddenly, Max sat up straight, his ears pricked and nose twitching. He let out a low, uncertain whine. Ethan looked up from his book. "What's wrong, boy?" he asked, but Max was already on his feet, pacing restlessly toward the back door. He scratched at it, looking back at Ethan with urgent, pleading eyes. Ethan frowned. Max had never acted like this before. Sometimes he barked at raccoons or chased rabbits, but this felt different. There was something urgent about the way Max kept glancing at him, then back at the door, as if trying to tell him something. All right, Ethan said, setting his book aside. He got up and walked to the door, opening it quietly. Max bolted out into the night, his tail high and wagging. The porch light cast a small circle of yellow on the grass, but Max didn't stop there. He ran straight into the darkness, heading for the trees at the far end of the yard. "Max, wait!" Ethan called, grabbing a flashlight and hurrying after him. He could see Max's golden fur glinting in the moonlight as he disappeared into the shadows. Ethan followed, pushing through tall grass and brambles, his heart pounding with worry. The woods at night were a mysterious place. Crickets sang, and every step seemed to echo in the stillness. Max's barks grew fainter, leading Ethan deeper into the trees. After several minutes of stumbling through the underbrush, Ethan finally saw Max up ahead, standing beside a thick patch of bushes. The dog was wagging his tail, whining softly, but he didn't move any closer. He just looked back at Ethan, then at something hidden behind the branches. "What is it, boy?" Ethan whispered, shining his flashlight into the thicket. At first, he saw nothing but leaves and shadows. Then something moved. A small, trembling figure crouched behind the bushes, half hidden in the darkness. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He took a step closer, and the beam of his flashlight revealed something he had never seen before. It was a girl, but not an ordinary girl. She was small and delicate, with smooth, pale blue skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Her hair was silver and fell in soft waves down her back. Her eyes were wide and violet, reflecting the light in an almost magical way. She wore a thin, strange-looking garment that seemed to shift colors as she moved. The girl looked up at Ethan, her expression fearful and confused. She spoke a few words in a musical, unfamiliar language, her voice trembling. Ethan couldn't understand her, but the fear in her eyes was clear. Max, however, seemed to know exactly what to do. He walked forward slowly, his tail wagging in a friendly way, and lay down beside the girl, resting his head gently on her lap. He let out a low, comforting whine, licking her hand. The girl flinched at first, but then she relaxed, her small hand resting on Max's head as if she found comfort in his presence. Ethan stared in disbelief. Was this really happening? Was this strange girl an alien, or just a very unusual child? He didn't know, but one thing was certain. She was frightened and alone, and Max had already accepted her as a friend. Kneeling down, Ethan spoke softly. "Hey, it's okay. "We're not going to hurt you," he said, even though he knew she probably couldn't understand him. He held out his hand, showing he meant no harm. The girl hesitated, then reached out with trembling fingers and touched his hand lightly. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone. Ethan glanced around nervously. If anyone else saw her, he didn't know what they would do. The world wasn't always kind to strangers, especially ones who looked so different. He needed to get her somewhere safe. "Come on, let's get out of here," he said gently. He stood up, motioning for the girl to follow him. Max got up too, wagging his tail as if encouraging her. The girl rose slowly, still holding Max's fur as she walked. They moved through the trees, Ethan leading the way, Max and the girl close behind. When they reached the edge of the yard, Ethan stopped and looked at the house. The lights were still on, and everything looked peaceful and normal. But he knew nothing would ever be quite the same after tonight. Ethan opened the back door quietly and led them into the garage, which was warm and filled with old blankets and tools. He found a thick quilt and spread it out on the floor for the girl. Max curled up beside her, refusing to leave her side. The girl sat quietly, looking around. With wide, curious eyes, she seemed calmer now, especially with Max so close. Ethan brought her a glass of water, which she sipped cautiously, and found some bread and fruit to share. She ate slowly, watching him and Max closely, as if trying to understand what kind of place this was. Ethan sat down across from her, not wanting to frighten her further. He tried asking simple questions, pointing to himself and saying, "Ethan," then pointing to Max and saying, "Max." The girl watched him, then repeated softly, "Ethan. Max." Her voice was clear, and she smiled a little as she stroked Max's fur. As the hours passed, Ethan realized how tired she looked. He handed her a pillow and gestured that she could rest. The girl nodded gratefully, lying down on the blanket with Max curled up protectively beside her. She closed her eyes, and soon her breathing slowed as she drifted into sleep. Ethan watched them for a long time. He had so many questions, but tonight was not the time to ask them. All he knew was that Max had brought this mysterious visitor into their lives, and he couldn't turn her away. He closed the garage door quietly, making sure they were safe. Then he sat on the steps, thinking about everything that had happened. The stars outside seemed to shine even brighter, as if the whole universe was watching this strange new friendship begin. And in that peaceful moment, Ethan understood something important. Sometimes the heart knows what words cannot express. Max had seen the truth before anyone else. He had found a friend in the most unexpected place, and in doing so, he had changed all their lives forever. When Ethan woke up the next morning, the sunlight was shining through the windows, painting golden shapes on the kitchen floor. For a moment, he almost forgot about the strange visitor from the night before. He went through his usual routine, pouring himself a cup of coffee and glancing out the window at the dew on the grass. Then he remembered the alien girl was still in his garage. His heart skipped a beat as he hurried toward the garage door. He wondered if it had all been a strange dream, but when he quietly opened the door, he saw Max lying next to the girl, both of them still fast asleep. Max's head rested on her lap, and the girl's silver hair fell gently across her face. She looked peaceful, no longer frightened like she had been in the woods. Ethan watched them for a few moments, amazed by the trust that had formed so quickly. He knew he needed to figure out what to do next, but he didn't want to frighten her by waking her up too suddenly. So, he went back into the house, got some bread, apples, and a clean towel, and waited until he heard Max's collar jingling. Soon, the girl sat up, blinking sleepily. Max licked her hand, and she smiled, looking around the garage as if she was remembering where she was. When Ethan came in, he moved slowly and kept his voice soft, hoping not to scare her. "Good morning," he said, offering her a friendly smile. He pointed to himself and repeated, "Ethan." Then he pointed to Max and said, Max. The girl remembered, repeating their names. Ethan, Max. Her voice was soft, but she seemed less afraid now. Ethan handed her some bread and fruit, showing her that it was safe to eat. She took the bread, sniffed it, and then took a small bite. Her eyes lit up at the taste, and she finished the rest quickly, as if she hadn't eaten for a long time. Max watched her eat, his tail thumping against the floor. After breakfast, Ethan decided to try and talk to her more. He realized that she couldn't speak English, but maybe he could use pictures and gestures to help her understand. He found some old notebooks and colored pencils from a drawer and sat down on the floor, sketching a simple picture of his house, himself, Max, and the garage. The girl watched with interest, then pointed at the picture and smiled when she saw Max's drawing. She took a pencil and began to draw as well. Her hands were graceful, and her picture was different from anything Ethan had seen before. She drew a small ship shaped like a flower, a planet with rings around it, and stick figures that looked like herself. There was also a drawing of Max, which made the dog wag his tail even harder. Ethan pointed to the picture of the ship and made a swooshing sound, then pointed to the garage and tilted his head, asking a silent question. The girl nodded slowly and pointed to herself, then to the ship, and then made a crashing gesture with her hands. Ethan understood. Her ship had crashed near his house, and that's how she ended up in the woods. He nodded, trying to show her he understood. He then pointed to himself and spread his hands wide, meaning, "What should I do?" The girl looked down, her expression sad, and hugged Max, who licked her cheek and nuzzled against her. Ethan felt a wave of sympathy for the girl. He didn't know where she came from or how to help her get home, but he knew he couldn't leave her alone. He also realized that Max was the key to helping her feel safe. Whenever she was with Max, she seemed less afraid, and she even tried to copy some of the sounds Max made, giggling softly when Max barked or wagged his tail. Later that morning, Ethan tried to teach her some more words. He pointed at objects and said their names slowly: chair, table, window. The girl listened carefully and repeated the words, her accent musical but clear. She seemed to enjoy learning, and every time she got a word right, Ethan smiled and Max barked as if to encourage her. The day passed quietly. Ethan had to go outside for a few chores, so he showed the girl around the house, always with Max by her side. He showed her how to use the sink, how to turn the lights on and off, and even let her watch TV for a little while. She was fascinated by everything, especially the moving pictures and the sound coming from the speakers. Max sat next to her, sometimes tilting his head at the screen, trying to understand the cartoons. In the afternoon, Ethan noticed something unusual outside. In the far distance, near the edge of the field, a strange shimmer flickered in the air. It was gone almost as quickly as it appeared, but Ethan felt uneasy. He wondered if someone, or something, might be looking for the alien girl. He went back inside, deciding not to mention it to her yet. Instead, he made sandwiches for lunch and sat with the girl and Max on the floor of the living room. As they ate, Ethan pointed to himself and said, "Friend." Then he pointed to her and said, "Friend." The girl looked at Max, then at Ethan and smiled. "Friend?" she repeated softly. After lunch, the girl seemed curious about the outside world. She looked longingly through the window at the trees and the birds. Ethan could tell she wanted to go outside, but he was worried it might not be safe. Still, Max seemed excited to show her around, so Ethan decided to take a chance. He led them out to the backyard, keeping a careful eye on the woods. The girl stepped onto the grass, her bare feet touching the ground, and she smiled in wonder. She reached down and touched the leaves, the flowers, and the earth, marveling at their texture and color. Max ran around her, barking joyfully and bringing her sticks and leaves as if showing off his favorite treasures. The girl giggled as Max chased butterflies and rolled in the grass. For a moment, Ethan forgot about his worries. The three of them played together, enjoying the warm sun and the fresh air. The girl even tried to throw a ball for Max, though her throw was clumsy. Max didn't mind. He ran after it and brought it back, dropping it at her feet and wagging his tail, eager to play again. As the sun began to set, Ethan called them inside. The girl hesitated, looking at the sky with longing, but she followed Max back into the house. That night, Ethan gave her a clean towel and showed her how to wash her face and hands. She copied his actions, laughing softly when Max tried to lick the water from her fingers. After dinner, they all sat together in the living room. Ethan played gentle music on the radio, and the girl listened with fascination, swaying to the rhythm. Max curled up beside her, resting his head on her lap. The girl stroked Max's fur, her expression peaceful. As bedtime approached, Ethan prepared a place for her in the guest room. He brought in more blankets and a soft pillow, making sure she was comfortable. Max lay down on the floor next to her bed, refusing to leave her side. The girl smiled at Ethan and said, "Thank you," in a soft, careful voice. Ethan was touched by her gratitude. He sat with them for a while, watching the girl and Max fall asleep. He wondered what the next day would bring. Would someone come looking for her? Would she be able to contact her home? He didn't know, but he promised himself that he would protect her and help her no matter what. As he turned off the lights and went to his own room, Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Max's loyalty and the girl's gentle presence had filled the house with a warmth that was hard to describe. He fell asleep listening to the soft sounds of Max breathing and the quiet world outside, feeling like he was part of something extraordinary. Outside, the stars shone brightly and the woods were silent. But somewhere far away, in the night sky, something was watching and waiting. The adventure was only just beginning, and Ethan, Max, and their new friend were ready to face whatever came next, together. The next day began with the gentle sound of rain tapping against the windows. Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He lay in bed for a while, thinking about the strange days that had changed his life so quickly. His house, which once felt so quiet and ordinary, now felt like a place of secrets and wonders. He wondered how long the alien girl would stay, and if her presence would bring more trouble. He also thought about Max, who seemed happier than ever with his new friend. When Ethan went into the hallway, he heard soft laughter coming from the guest room. Carefully, he peeked inside. The girl was sitting on the floor drawing pictures, with colored pencils while Max watched with wide, curious eyes. She was drawing their little family, herself, Max, and Ethan. On the edge of the page, she drew her flower-shaped spaceship, now lying crooked in the woods, hidden from sight. "Good morning," Ethan said softly. The girl looked up, her eyes bright. "Good morning, Ethan," she replied. She had practiced saying his name, and every day her English improved. It was still hard for her to say everything she wanted, but she tried, using her hands and simple words. Ethan admired her patience. Max barked a greeting, and the girl giggled, hugging him around the neck. Max was clearly very protective. Wherever she went, Max followed, almost like a furry shadow. If she went to the kitchen, Max came along. If she went outside, Max waited by the door, tail wagging. Ethan noticed that Max would bark if the girl even looked sad or frightened. They had breakfast together, toast and jam for Ethan, more fruit for the girl, and a big bowl of dog food for Max. As they ate, Ethan tried to ask the girl about her home. He pointed to the stars through the window and said, "Where?" The girl understood. She drew a ringed planet on her paper and then pointed up, her finger tracing the sky. Ethan was fascinated. He wondered how she had traveled so far and how she had managed to survive her crash. The girl did not have the words to explain everything, but she drew a small group of stick figures who looked like her. Family, Ethan guessed. She then drew herself inside the crashed ship, and outside the ship she drew Max, who had found her. She smiled as she showed the picture to Ethan, pointing at Max and saying, "Friend, saved." Ethan nodded, feeling proud of his loyal dog. He knew Max had a special heart. Sometimes animals understood things that people could not. Later that morning, the rain stopped, and Ethan decided to check the woods where the girl's ship had crashed. He wanted to know if anyone else had found it. He put on his boots and raincoat and told Max to stay with the girl. "Protect," he said, and Max barked once, sitting beside the girl as if he understood. Ethan walked through the wet grass and trees. The forest was quiet except for birds singing after the rain. He moved carefully, watching for anything strange. When he reached the crash site, he found the flower-shaped ship half buried in mud and leaves. It looked damaged and powerless. The small door was open, but there were no signs of footprints or anyone searching nearby. He checked around and felt a little better. Maybe no one knew she was here yet. Still, he covered the ship with branches and leaves, trying to hide it even more. As he worked, he heard a distant humming sound. He froze, looking up, but saw nothing in the gray sky. The sound faded, and Ethan hurried home, feeling uneasy. Back at the house, the girl and Max were playing together in the living room. Max had brought her every toy he owned, piling them in front of her as if giving her a gift. The girl laughed and clapped, delighted by his silly games. Ethan joined them, trying to hide his worry. He decided to teach the girl more English words. He pointed at things around the room: door, window, chair, light. The girl repeated each word, smiling at her progress. Max barked in approval every time she got it right, making her laugh. Suddenly, the television flickered. For a moment, strange colors danced across the screen, forming patterns that looked almost like writing. The girl's eyes widened and she stood up, staring at the TV with hope and fear. She touched the screen gently, then looked at Ethan. "Home," she whispered. Ethan understood. Someone was sending a signal. But was it her family or someone else? The girl looked frightened, and Max stood up, placing himself between her and the television, his ears alert. Ethan turned off the TV just in case. He knelt beside the girl. "Safe. Here. Promise," he said. The girl nodded, but she looked worried. She drew a picture of a different kind of spaceship, bigger and darker than her own. She pointed at the drawing and shook her head, then hugged Max tightly. Ethan realized there was danger. Not everyone who came from the stars would be friendly. He knew he had to protect the girl, no matter what. Max seemed to agree, pressing close to her and licking her cheek. The rest of the day passed with a quiet tension. Ethan tried to act normal, but he kept looking outside, watching for strange lights or noises. Max stayed close to the girl, never letting her out of his sight. Even when she took a nap, Max lay across the door, keeping watch. In the afternoon, Ethan decided to teach the girl a new game, hide and seek. He thought it might help her if she ever needed to hide quickly. He explained the rules slowly, using simple words and gestures. Max understood right away, running off to hide behind the sofa. The girl laughed, clapping her hands, and went to find Max. Soon she learned the game, hiding in small spaces and peeking out at Ethan, her violet eyes shining with excitement. Max always found her first, his nose too clever to be fooled. They played for an hour, the house filled with happy sounds. For a little while, Ethan forgot his worries. He was just a friend, playing with his dog and a remarkable visitor from another world. That evening, as they sat together at dinner, the girl surprised Ethan by speaking a full sentence. "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Max. Safe here. Happy." Her English was slow, but the meaning was clear. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart he hadn't felt in years. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently. "You're welcome," he said. "We're friends." Max barked softly, wagging his tail. After dinner, Ethan sat by the window looking at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter now, as if they held secrets. He wondered what would happen if the people searching for the girl found her. Would they be kind, or would they try to take her away? He knew he couldn't let her fall into the wrong hands. The girl and Max fell asleep together, curled up on a blanket near the fire. Ethan covered them gently and watched them for a while, listening to the soft sound of their breathing. He felt responsible for them both, and for the first time he was glad to have someone to protect. As Ethan prepared for bed, he made a silent promise to do whatever it took to keep them safe. He would watch for signs of danger, hide the girl, if needed, and trust Max's instincts. No matter what happened, they would face it together. That night, as rain began to fall again, Ethan dreamed of distant planets and bright swirling galaxies. He dreamed of Max running through fields of stars and the girl laughing as she rode on his back, safe and free. When he woke in the dark hours before dawn, Ethan felt hopeful. Their story was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. And whatever tomorrow brought, he knew he was not alone anymore. The next day started with an unusual silence. Ethan woke up early and noticed that Max was already awake, sitting by the window, his nose pressed to the glass and his ears perked. The alien girl, whom Ethan now quietly called Lyra in his mind because the sound reminded him of her gentle voice, slept peacefully on her blanket, holding Max's favorite ball in her hand. Ethan moved quietly, not wanting to wake her, but Max turned and gave a low, anxious whine. "Easy, boy," Ethan whispered, kneeling down and scratching behind Max's ears. "What's up?" Max just stared out the window, his tail twitching, in worry. Ethan followed his gaze and noticed nothing but the wet yard and swaying trees. Still, he trusted Max's instincts. Max was never wrong about danger. A short while later, Lyra woke up. She stretched and smiled sleepily, then spotted Ethan and Max and ran over to them. She seemed happier now, more relaxed in the house and less afraid of everything new. She had learned many words, and though she still spoke slowly, she could say what she wanted. She called Ethan by his name, and she called Max friend. That morning, Ethan decided it was time to help Lyra find a way to contact her family. He remembered the strange message on the television, the colors and patterns that only Lyra seemed to understand. If someone could send a signal to her, maybe she could send one back. Ethan was no expert in alien technology, but he was good at fixing things. He asked Lyra to draw her ship's controls. She sat at the kitchen table, working carefully with the colored pencils. When she was finished, she showed Ethan a picture of a round panel filled with glowing buttons and lines. She pointed to a small crystal she wore around her neck, explaining in her broken English, "Crystal, energy, ship talk." Ethan took the old radio from the garage and opened it on the kitchen table. He also found spare wires, batteries, and a broken walkie-talkie. With Lyra watching, he slowly began to connect the parts, asking her for help with the drawings whenever he was unsure. Lyra watched him work, sometimes pointing at the right wires or showing him with her hands how the crystal might fit into the design. Max lay on the floor nearby, but he never let his eyes leave the window. He seemed to sense something Ethan could not see. After an hour of careful work, Ethan connected the crystal to the small transmitter. He handed it to Lyra and gestured for her to try. She closed her eyes, pressing the crystal between her palms, and hummed softly. The device flickered, letting out a strange, musical sound. Suddenly, a pulse of colored light shimmered through the kitchen, filling the room with a warm, peaceful glow. The radio crackled with a voice Ethan could not understand, but Lyra's eyes filled with tears of relief and hope. She spoke a few words in her own language, her voice trembling with happiness. Ethan could not understand the message, but he could see how much it meant to her. He smiled and patted her shoulder. "Did it work?" he asked. Lyra nodded, wiping her eyes. Home, soon. Family come. Thank you, Ethan. She hugged Max, who wagged his tail in excitement, but even with hope shining in their hearts, Max still seemed tense. As Lyra's family came closer, Ethan worried more about the danger he had felt yesterday in the woods. After lunch, Ethan decided to check the crash site again, just to be safe. He told Lyra to stay inside and keep Max with her. Don't open the door unless it's me, he said, showing her how to lock it. Lyra nodded and hugged Max, who whimpered but obeyed. Ethan made his way through the muddy woods. The sun was hidden behind clouds, and the air felt heavy, as if the whole world was waiting for something to happen. At the crash site, he saw that the branches he had placed had been moved. Someone had been there. He crouched, searching for footprints. There were new tracks in the mud, large, strange shapes, not like any human shoe. His heart raced. Was it Lyra's family? Or someone else? Suddenly, he heard movement behind him. Ethan spun around, holding up his flashlight. A dark figure slipped between the trees, tall and thin, with a metallic suit that shimmered even in the weak light. It moved quickly, vanishing into the shadows. Ethan's hands shook. He hurried home, his mind racing. He didn't know if the figure was friend or foe, but he knew he had to protect Lyra and Max. When he reached the house, he found Max at the door, barking wildly. Lyra stood behind him, her eyes wide with fear. "Ethan!" she cried, running to him. "Bad people here!" Ethan hugged her tightly. "You're safe. I'm here," he said, though his own voice shook. He pulled the curtains closed and locked every door and window. He told Lyra to hide with Max in the closet if anything happened. Then he picked up his phone, but there was no signal. The air was thick with worry, but Ethan tried to stay calm. Night fell quickly. Outside, the wind howled, and shadows seemed to move in the corners of the yard. Inside, Ethan, Lyra, and Max sat quietly, waiting and listening. Every sound made them jump, a branch tapping against the roof, an owl hooting in the trees. Suddenly, a light flashed in the woods, bright and blue, moving among the trees. Max jumped up, barking furiously. Ethan grabbed a heavy flashlight and told Lyra to stay down. He went to the window and peeked outside. The blue light was moving closer, slow and steady. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest. He saw the shape of a ship, smaller than Lyra's, hovering between the trees. The dark figure from the woods stepped out, holding a glowing device in its hand. It scanned the yard, searching. Max pressed close to Lyra, growling deep in his throat. Lyra's hands shook, but she reached for Max's fur, trying to stay brave. Ethan made a decision. He quietly opened the back door and slipped outside, hoping to distract the intruder. He crept through the shadows, heart pounding. As he moved closer, the figure turned, sensing him. Ethan called out, trying to sound brave. "Go away! You're not welcome here!" The figure lifted its glowing device, shining a blue beam at Ethan. He shielded his eyes, but then Max burst from the house, barking with all his might. Max ran at the stranger, fearless, his tail high. The figure was startled and stepped back. Max circled the intruder, barking and growling, forcing the figure to back away. Ethan yelled for Max to return, but Max stood his ground, protecting his home and his friends. Lyra appeared in the doorway, calling softly, "Max, come." Her voice carried through the night, clear and strong. Max ran back to her side, still growling as the blue light faded and the figure retreated. The small ship in the woods rose into the air, spinning and vanishing into the sky with a soft hum. The night became quiet again. Ethan ran back to the house, locking the door behind him. He hugged Lyra and Max, feeling relief wash over him. "You were very brave," he told Max, who wagged his tail and licked Ethan's hand. Lyra hugged Max tightly. "Max, my hero," she whispered, smiling through her tears. They stayed together in the living room, watching the sky through the window. Soon, the blue lights returned. but these were gentle and peaceful. A beautiful ship floated above the trees, its lights shining softly. Lyra pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with hope. "Family," she whispered. Ethan smiled, tears in his eyes. "You're safe now." As the ship landed softly in the yard, Max wagged his tail and barked, excited to see new friends. Lyra hugged Ethan tightly, then Max, whispering words of thanks. Ethan knew their story was almost at an end, but his heart felt full. Max's loyalty had protected them all, and Lyra's kindness had changed their lives forever. They stood together, ready to greet the visitors from the stars, trusting in the friendship that had brought them together. The alien ship landed gently in the yard, its blue and silver lights shimmering softly in the darkness. Ethan, Lyra, and Max stood together at the window, watching in silence as the craft settled on the wet grass. The door opened with a quiet hiss, and a ramp slid down to the ground. Ethan's heart beat quickly. He could see figures moving inside the glowing ship, their shadows long and graceful. Lyra squeezed Ethan's hand tightly. Her violet eyes sparkled with tears, and for a moment, she seemed afraid. Max felt her fear and pressed against her side, wagging his tail as if to remind her that everything would be all right. Ethan smiled at her, giving her a gentle nod. "It's time," he said softly. The first alien stepped out of the ship. She was tall and slender, with the same pale blue skin and silver hair as Lyra. Her eyes were kind, and she moved with gentle steps, pausing when she saw Lyra at the door. Behind her came two others, one older with lines of wisdom on his face, and a younger one, just a child. Lyra let go of Ethan's hand and ran to the door, opening it wide. "Family!" she cried out, her voice trembling with hope and happiness. Her family rushed forward, arms outstretched. They embraced Lyra tightly, speaking softly in their musical language, tears shining on their cheeks. For a moment, nothing else in the world mattered. Ethan stood back, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Max wagged his tail so hard that it thumped against Ethan's leg. The reunion was beautiful to watch. Lyra spoke quickly, telling her family about Ethan and Max, her rescuers and friends. She pointed at Ethan, her voice full of excitement and gratitude, and her family nodded, bowing their heads in respect. Then Lyra knelt down and hugged Max, whispering her thanks into his golden fur. One of the aliens, the older man, approached Ethan and placed a hand over his heart. He spoke a few words, and though Ethan did not understand the language, he understood the meaning. The alien smiled and bowed, then handed Ethan a small, glowing pendant, a sign of thanks and friendship. Lyra's family invited Ethan and Max to come inside the ship. Ethan hesitated, looking down at his muddy shoes, but Lyra laughed and took his hand, pulling him gently up the ramp. Max followed close, curious and excited. Inside, the ship was like nothing Ethan had ever seen. The walls shimmered with soft light, and the air smelled like wildflowers and rain. Strange symbols glowed on the panels, and gentle music filled the space. Lyra showed Ethan and Max around, smiling with pride. She introduced her family, using simple English words mixed with her own language. Her mother, whose name sounded like Seren, hugged Ethan, tears still on her cheeks. Her father, Kyle, bowed deeply, and her little brother, Yari, reached out to pet Max. Max licked the boy's hand, making him laugh. Lyra's family was gentle and welcoming, grateful for the kindness Ethan and Max had shown. Ethan sat with them in the central room, listening as Lyra explained what had happened after her ship crashed. She spoke with more English than before, her words growing stronger and clearer. She told them how Max had found her in the woods and how Ethan had given her a safe place to stay. She showed them the pictures she had drawn, and her family looked at each one with amazement. Lyra's parents thanked Ethan again, their voices soft and full of respect. They understood that without his help, and without Max's brave heart, Lyra might never have found her way home. They offered Ethan gifts from their world, seeds that glowed with inner light, a soft cloth that changed color with every touch, and a small device that played beautiful music when held. Ethan was touched by their generosity. He accepted the gifts, smiling and bowing his head. "Thank you," he said. "Lyra is always welcome here. You all are." The evening passed with laughter and stories. Lyra's family showed Ethan the stars on a glowing map, tracing the path from their home planet to Earth. They explained that their people traveled among the stars, always searching for friendship and peace. Ethan listened in wonder, imagining a world where kindness was the most important thing. Max became the center of attention. Yari played with him, rolling a ball across the shiny floor. Lyra's father tried to teach Max a word in their language, and Max barked in reply, making everyone laugh. The family thanked Max over and over, calling him brave friend and protector. Soon, Lyra's mother spoke quietly to Ethan, using careful English. "Lyra must come home now," she said, her voice sad but gentle. "But she will always remember you. And Max." Lyra looked at Ethan, tears filling her eyes. She hugged him tightly, her small hands shaking. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything. I never forget you. Never forget Max." She knelt down and hugged Max, whispering in his ear and pressing her forehead to his. Max wagged his tail, licking away her tears. Ethan felt a deep sadness, but also a sense of pride. He knew that Lyra was safe now, with her family. He squeezed her hand. "You are strong," he told her. "And you are my friend. You always have a home here." Lyra smiled, holding out the glowing pendant her father had given Ethan. She pressed it into his hand, closing his fingers around it. "For Max," she said softly. "If you ever need me, hold this. I will come." It was time to say goodbye. Lyra's family thanked Ethan one last time, and Max gave everyone a happy bark. They walked down the ramp, feeling the soft grass under their feet. Lyra looked back at the house, at the place where she had been so afraid and lonely, and now felt so loved. Ethan and Max stood together, waving as Lyra and her family entered the ship. The door closed with a gentle sound, and the lights on the ship grew brighter, shining in the night like a second moon. The ship lifted off the ground, rising slowly into the sky. Ethan watched as it disappeared among the stars, his heart full of mixed feelings, sadness, but also hope. Days passed, and life returned to its quiet rhythm. Ethan worked in his yard and fixed computers for his neighbors. Max ran in the fields, chasing rabbits and barking at birds. But something was different. Now, Ethan often looked up at the night sky, remembering Lyra's laughter and the kindness of her family. Max seemed restless sometimes, sitting by the window and watching the stars. He kept the glowing pendant on his collar, and sometimes it shone, softly in the dark, a gentle reminder of their friends from far away. One evening, as the sun was setting, Ethan sat on the porch with Max by his side. The world was peaceful, and the air was warm. Suddenly, a soft, strange light filled the yard. Ethan stood up, heart pounding. Max jumped to his feet, tail wagging wildly. From the shadows, a figure appeared. It was Lyra. She ran across the yard, her hair glowing in the twilight, and Max barked with pure joy. Ethan smiled, running to greet her. Lyra hugged Max and Ethan, laughing through her tears. Lyra held out her hand, showing Ethan a small flower from her world. "For you," she said. "For family." Ethan hugged her, feeling all the sadness melt away. Lyra explained that her family would visit Earth again, bringing peace and friendship. She promised to return whenever Ethan or Max needed her. From that day, Ethan knew that no matter how strange or lonely life became, there was always hope for friendship, even among the stars. Max had shown the way with his heart, and Lyra had answered with kindness.